Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar. My name is Susan Villegas, and I'm the Training Development Coordinator at Now, and as such, I bring you these webinars on the third Thursday of each month. If you've missed any of our past webinars, you can find replays on our website, nowfoods.com/webinars, or on the Now YouTube channel. We are very excited that you chose to take a break from your busy day and join us for this stress-free presentation. In today's 40-minute webinar, we welcome longtime industry veteran and Now's Senior Education Manager, Neil Levin. Neil is a nationally board-certified clinical nutritionist with a Diplomat in Advanced Nutritional Laboratory Assessment. In case you ever wondered what the DANLA stands for, there you go. He is also a professional member of the International and American Associations of Clinical Nutritionists and a member of the Scientific Council of the National Clinical Nutrition Certification Board. He also serves on the board of directors for MAHO, and on the home front, Neil provides a wealth of knowledge to our team when it comes to nutrition and dietary ingredients. And as always, Neil has some excellent information to share with us today. So please join me in welcoming Neil Levin to help us better understand the effects of stress and what we can do to better manage our typical everyday stress. Welcome, Neil.
Thank you, Sue. And just as a reminder, this is me. I'm been in the industry for about 50 years and have a bunch of credentials, so we're not going to go into great detail there, but if you want to see that, here it is.
And you know, Neil, I'm just going to pop in here 1 minute because I don't remember life being so stressful. And you look at that picture of you and, you know, it says it all. It wasn't a stressful life. So now we have to deal with all this stress and, you know, how they're saying with so many people post-COVID, just all kinds of stress and anxiety. So this will be a really great presentation. Thank you.
You're welcome. So yeah, let's talk about stress, and here's some of the triggers of stress I have on the slide. Hopefully you don't have those. And what is the definition of stress? Any kind of change that makes a strain on the body, physical, emotional, or psychological. So stress is your body's response to something because the body is perceiving that it needs some kind of attention or action from you to deal with that situation. So some of the causes could be financial, family, relationship, marriage, divorce, jobs, of course, having jobs, losing jobs, moving, any kind of illness or pandemic, or anything that's traumatic to you. And what's traumatic to you might not be traumatic to somebody else. Your triggers might be different from somebody else's. But it's important to note that stress is normal. Everyone gets stress, and the body is designed to handle it in various ways, both physically and mentally. So what are some of the effects and symptoms of stress? Well, one of the main things is the adrenal glands. We've all heard of the adrenal glands. They help us respond to these stressors by producing hormones such as cortisol. And if stress becomes everyday, it can be difficult to manage one of the stress hormones called cortisol. And that can also affect appetite and body weight, by the way, these stress hormones. And we'll go into some of those details in a minute. So we've all probably heard of fight or flight response to stress. That's the way the body will handle acute stress or short-term stress. And it is a short-term fix. It's a way for the body to deal with something immediate. As an example, the penguin being interviewed after the fight. How did I do it? I don't know. I guess the flight or flight mechanism kicked in. And well, in case you haven't heard, Bob, I'm a penguin. We don't fly. So his only response to fight or flight was to fight. So during the fight or flight response, the body releases a couple of hormones from the adrenal gland, both adrenaline and cortisol. And the sympathetic nervous system is involved. It triggers the release of adrenaline from the adrenal gland, and the adrenal medulla converts the amino acid tyrosine to adrenaline, noradrenaline, which is also known as norepinephrine, and dopamine. So tyrosine is the source of these hormones in terms of nutritional components, and tyrosine is actually derived largely from dietary phenylalanine. Phenylalanine, an essential amino acid, is primarily there to convert into tyrosine in the body. So phenylalanine to tyrosine to these hormones. And tyrosine makes other things too, melanin in the skin, thyroid hormone, etc. So adrenaline increases the rate of blood circulation and the breathing rate, and helps you increase carbohydrate metabolism so that there's more sugars available for the muscles for any kind of exertion, fight or flight. And this is all controlled through a delicate balancing feedback system of hormones between the hypothalamus, the pituitary gland, and the adrenal gland. And the stress effects on the body are a result of that trigger, that cascade. So the stress effects on the body include blood pressure, heart rate, reduced blood clotting time, etc. So these hormones, dopamine, serotonin, and norepinephrine, are important in regulating that stress response. And serotonin receptors in particular can modulate the release of many of the neurotransmitters. Serotonin is known as an inhibitory neurotransmitter, which means that it inhibits the release of certain neurotransmitters that are associated with stress. So when we're looking at adrenaline and noradrenaline or norepinephrine, there are some differences in them. The most common neurotransmitter of the sympathetic nervous system is the norepinephrine. They both work as hormones and neurotransmitters. They're both part of the flight or fight response. Adrenaline is mostly made in the adrenal glands, and norepinephrine is mainly from the nervous system. Adrenaline is made from norepinephrine, and norepinephrine is made from dopamine. And where adrenaline works on almost all the body tissues, noradrenaline, norepinephrine mainly works to increase or maintain blood pressure. So blood pressure is largely controlled by stress hormones, important to know. So adrenaline is only released during times of stress, but the noradrenaline is released continuously. And the common use in medicines are here. We're not going to go into that, but there are some different uses in them. The noradrenaline is actually used to raise low blood pressure. So some of the physical reactions to stress: the eyes dilate to let more light in so you can see more clearly. The skin turns pale. Blood vessels get a signal to divert blood to other areas, which is important. The heart pumps faster and harder, which increases blood pressure. The muscles receive more blood flow and oxygen for that fight or flight response. Even stored glycogen, it's a storage form for sugars in the liver, is converted to glucose to raise blood glucose, blood sugar, for more quick energy. You breathe deeper and faster, so there's more oxygen for the blood and the muscles. And of course, the adrenal gland is releasing those two hormones we spoke about. So here's another graphic showing some of those responses, how that fight or flight response, that stress response, affects virtually all the systems in the body, from the brain to the bladder. And, we don't want to be buried in stress like this little guy. So another hormone that's secreted by the adrenal gland is cortisol. And a lot of you have heard of both adrenaline and cortisol. Cortisol is one of the hormones that releases sugar in the liver to raise blood sugar levels. Chronic stress will keep blood sugar levels high. So that's one reason why you might have a high fasting blood sugar. And that fight or flight long-term stress actually causes noticeable wear on the body. It affects us physically, emotionally, and our behavior. So everyday stress triggered by cortisol can affect the blood sugar, which affects the loss of control of appetite. We tend to crave more food. We tend to have stress-related nervous overeating, and we tend to accumulate abdominal fat and become more obese because of stress that is not going away short term. That saber-toothed tiger did not go away. It's there every day threatening you, or whatever your version of a saber-toothed tiger in your life is. So it's raising blood sugar, blood pressure from cortisol, the stress hormone, and it's disrupting our ability to sleep properly and wake up refreshed, which adds to stress, of course. So what can we do to turn stress into wellness? Well, one thing is to try adaptogens, which are botanical or herbal tonics. And there's a list of them here that we went through in our seminar, The Wonderful World of Herbs Part 1, which is available at nowfoods.com. So we're not going to go through all of these in detail, but we'll mention it's the ginsengs and ashwagandha, cordyceps, foti, holy basil, rhodiola, and eleuthero are some of the ones that are used. It's not an exhaustive list. There's probably 100 or more adaptogens available. We don't necessarily offer them all. But that category, when you see adaptogen, is designed to help the body adapt to stresses. So that's what the term adaptogen refers to. So if you see that description of an herb or botanical, that is something that will help us hopefully deal with stress. And I do want to highlight 3 botanicals for mood, stress, and sleep: Kava Kava, passion flower, and saffron. Kava Kava, often just called kava, is sold from the root, and it contains kavalactones, which are substances that support calmness, relaxation, happiness, and may also help the muscles to relax, which again offsets stress. All these effects are anti-stress. So we have a couple of kava products, the liquid and the capsules. We actually do use the capsules at our house and have for years as a way to deal with stress, muscle tightness, etc. Another herb is the passion flower, and that has been used in the Western Hemisphere for many centuries to promote a calm mood. You often will find passion flower in other products and formulas. It's often combined with valerian root or skullcap, hops, things for sleep and relaxation. And that's what passion flower looks like. It's actually a very beautiful botanical there. You can see how complex and colorful it is. And we use a standardized extract, 3.5% of the active components, to support a calm mood, temporary relief from nervousness and feelings of typical everyday stress, and the extracts helping with relaxation and alleviating occasional but minor tenseness and restlessness. So that sounds nice. Another herb, and this is a product we came out with about a year ago, is the saffron whole herb. You've heard of the saffron spice, and these 3 red components called stigmas are the part that we use for the spice and for the supplement. So it takes about 1,000 of these flowers to give 1 ounce of these stigmas, and they are ground up and powdered, and they're often extracted. We are fairly unique in having one that is a whole stigma, not an extract, that's still standardized to the actives, but it contains all the other components of the stigma. So it's more like eating the spice, in effect, than taking an extract, a fraction of the spice. And saffron seems to have an influence on neurotransmitters, including serotonin and GABA, which affect mood and sleep. I'm sure you've all heard of GABA, one of the supplements we sell. It's an amino acid compound. And saffron affects both the dopamine pathway and the serotonin pathway as a free radical scavenger to protect the delicate tissues there, but also supporting the mood-altering brain chemicals. And these are both relaxing, anti-stress type compounds produced in the body. So this is our product, may help maintain a positive mood and relaxed attitude. It's a whole stigma, but it's still 10% crosins, which is the active component. There's a natural color variation, but it does have that, what you're expecting as the color from a saffron product, helping with balanced immune response because it's a powerful free radical neutralizer as well. But it is for positive mood, relaxed attitude, and even promoting restful sleep. Now we have some amino acids that are precursors of these neurotransmitters and hormones. And just a refresher on amino acid chemistry, they've all got, if you look at this Tinker Toy type model, they all have the same backbone, an amine group and an acid group, which is where the amino acid term comes from. But each amino acid has a different side chain. It has different compounds attached to that backbone. And these differences, for example, here's tyrosine, one of the ones we're talking about, is significantly different from leucine or valine, a couple of the branched chain amino acids. So when we're making chains of peptides that become proteins as longer chains, these are compounds of different amino acids linked together, daisy chained together. And I've highlighted in this chart from the USDA the amino acid precursors of a couple of the important things we talked about. Tryptophan is a precursor of serotonin, and tryptophan, of course, is an essential amino acid that we have to get from the diet. And tyrosine, which is a non-essential amino acid because we can also make it from phenylalanine in the diet, is the precursor of the catecholamines, which are these other hormones, dopamine, adrenaline, etc. So when we're looking at those two main neurotransmitters, serotonin and dopamine, they're regulating appetite, our sex drive, our circulation. They control almost all of the other 180 or so neurotransmitters in the brain. Any deficiency creates an imbalance of all the neurotransmitters in the body, which can disturb mood and disturb our cognitive functioning. Now, GABA is a non-essential amino acid made from the dietary amino acid glutamic acid. And it's synthesized from glutamic acid using vitamin B6 as a cofactor. It's a major inhibitory transmitter in the brain. It regulates the number of neurons that are firing to help promote relaxation, ease nervous tension, helps healthy sleep patterns, and calm us. And if you take it orally and it works because it will pass the blood-brain barrier when it combines with phospholipids in the body, but it also has effects from the gut-brain axis going through the vagus nerve, which signals of neurotransmitters and hormones in our guts actually send signals to the brain and have similar effects in the brain, even when they're not passing directly through the blood-brain barrier. Interesting phenomenon. Glycine, of course, which is, there's no L-glycine, it's just one form, is a calming neurotransmitter in the brain as well, to help with nerve impulses and maintain healthy sleep patterns. L-DOPA, which we get from a bean extract, is a naturally occurring source of L-DOPA, which is a precursor to dopamine, one of the important feel-good brain chemicals. And this extract is actually an Ayurvedic herb. L-theanine, I'm sure you've all heard of. This is an amino acid that is primarily found in green tea. It promotes relaxation without drowsiness or negative side effects. It's a free radical fighter. It supports healthy cardiovascular function. It even helps to offset the stress effects of caffeine. So that's one reason why tea drinkers tend to have less of the stress effects, the blood pressure rises, and other things that people might get from having caffeine. It can be offset by an almost equal dose of theanine. Now, L-tryptophan is, as I mentioned earlier, an essential amino acid. It is used in protein synthesis. An estimated 10% or less of dietary tryptophan goes into the serotonin pathway through 5-HTP, 5-hydroxytryptophan, as the intermediate. And so tryptophan goes into 5-HTP, which goes into serotonin and melatonin. So those are the pathways in the body. So because tryptophan works on serotonin especially, but also melatonin, it helps with normal mood stress response, positive mood, restful sleep, and protecting the stomach and GI membranes, which is kind of a little known benefit of melatonin and serotonin, that they help regulate the circadian rhythm. In other words, the timing of what is happening in the body, in the gut, as well as other areas, not just sleep. So when does the stomach know to make acid and when to stop? When does it know in the GI tract to make repairs or to digest food? And that depends on signals from hormones, including serotonin and melatonin. So 5-HTP is the supplement that will go directly into the serotonin pathway, whereas tryptophan will also go to muscles and have other benefits. There's an estimated 10-to-1 relationship between taking dietary tryptophan and 5-HTP. In other words, 500 milligrams of tryptophan as a supplement might be roughly equivalent to 50 milligram 5-HTP as a supplement in terms of effects on serotonin pathway. L-Tyrosine is another amino acid. As I mentioned, it is primarily made from dietary phenylalanine. It helps mental alertness and healthy thyroid function, but also production of those neurotransmitters, dopamine and norepinephrine, which are needed for a normal, healthy stress response, as well as for these extra stresses that we've talked about. SAMe is the body's main methylator. It does contain a methyl group in the methionine, and it is needed to synthesize neurotransmitters for mood support as well. Taurine is another amino acid to help generate and regulate nerve impulses. It's used in the eyes, the brain, the nervous system, and glycine, GABA, and taurine work together as relaxing neurotransmitters in the body. And as one example, we have the True Calm product that combines these amino acids. So you see the GABA, the glycine, the taurine, and inositol has a role in those pathways as well. And valerian root, again, relaxing, as is magnesium. And we have some formulas that are actually labeled as stress formulas. The title of the formula has the word stress in it. So first of all, we have the CalMag stress formula, and it's a stress formula because it contains the B complex vitamins and vitamin C. So vitamin C, which is an antioxidant, also helps to support a normal adrenal response. It is estimated that the concentration of vitamin C in the adrenal gland is something like 100 or 150 times as much as is circulating in the bloodstream. So there is an affinity of vitamin C for the adrenal gland, and vitamin C gets used up as part of the stress response. And vitamin C is needed for other things, for immunity, for producing collagen and maintaining tissues in the body. It has a wide range of roles in the body, but adrenal response is part of it. And B vitamins, as we mentioned earlier, for example, vitamin B6 is used as part of the conversion of the amino acids into these hormones and neurotransmitters, but also pantothenic acid, vitamin B5, has a role in the adrenal response as well. And we see higher levels of it accumulating in the adrenal gland and being used up in the adrenal gland when there are stresses. So this is the CalMag stress formula. It does have some other nutrients in there, but the key ones are the vitamin C, as I mentioned earlier, the pantothenic acid, but the other B vitamins have roles in stress response as well as cofactors for various metabolic processes. We also have a product called Adrenal Stress Support, which was renamed recently. That was Super Cortisol Support in the past. And adrenal glands help our bodies, of course, respond to these stresses by producing cortisol. It's hard to manage appetite and body weight, blood sugar, when cortisol is produced as a response to everyday stress. So we have combined the vitamin C, pantothenic acid, chromium to help with blood sugar regulation, and Relora, which is a proprietary herbal combination that supports healthy adrenal function by relieving stress and promoting healthy eating patterns. So this is the formula which I had actually initially proposed back in the early 2000s. And it was actually because a lot of times when I'm eating breakfast, I'll put on the news or something, see what's going on, see what the weather is. And at that time, they were having these ads for these mass market products. There were a couple of them that were supposed to be to reduce cortisol, nervous eating, belly fat, etc. And when I looked up those things, being a geek, I found that they were using magnolia bark extract and making claims for studies that were using Relora, which was actually a blend of two herbs, the magnolia and the philodendron, and their proprietary blends of specifically processed extracts. So we call that borrowed science. They were not using the same botanical mixture or extracts that were used in the studies that they were claiming as the basis for saying that their product would be good for stress and for cortisol and for the negative effects of cortisol. They were actually using only one of the two botanicals and maybe not even the same type of extract. So that kind of got me fired up, where I proposed we do our own formula, which this ended up being the formula. But a lot of these are helping with the stress response. Relora, but there's also some green tea extract, ashwagandha, holy basil, reishi, and rhodiola, which are predominantly adaptogens to help our bodies adapt to stress. So this has been a popular formula, and there's many brands who have similar type formulas nowadays. But the newest one we have is the ashwagandha stress relief, and it's a combination of two active ingredients, the casein hydrolysate, a digested milk protein called Lactium, and ashwagandha extract standardized. So you take 1 to 2 capsules daily with or without food for stress or to help sleep. So Lactium is an interesting ingredient. It supports healthy cortisol levels to reduce stress symptoms, can help people sleep more quickly, sleep uninterrupted, and promote better sleep quality. And of course, ashwagandha is an adaptogen, as was mentioned earlier. So looking at the two ingredients separately, ashwagandha, anything that's an adaptogen counters the effects of stress to promote wellness through multiple non-specific actions. It's an Ayurvedic herb. The actives in ashwagandha are withanolides. There's steroidal, which is a chemical compound name. It's not related to the drug steroid or anything like that. But they're very similar to the Panax ginseng ginsenosides in both action and their appearance and structure. So these withanolides are studied and suggested to be involved in the GABA receptor system and other neurological pathways and free radical neutralizing. Now, the other component in this formula is the milk protein known as lactium. So this was an interesting story. 12 years of research with French University, and when a baby is nursing, their digestive systems release a lactium compound. As their digestive system develops over a few months, they digest the lactium down to amino acids, and they no longer have this protein that helps them get to sleep, stay asleep. If you've ever noticed that a baby that nursing tends to go right to sleep, this is why. Because that protein that is in babies' digestive systems, when their digestive systems are not fully developed and not fully digesting the protein in the milk, it's releasing this peptide that makes them blissful, calm, sleepy, and nursing babies go to sleep. Nursing toddlers don't, if you ever notice. And adults who drink milk don't tend to get sleepy. So that's the difference. Reproducing this protein in a form that adults can take and get the same benefits. So there's an innovative innovative process to isolate this milk protein, alpha casozepine from casein, and they've named that lactium. So clinical trials, they give it to stressed, healthy human volunteers. It has relaxing and anti-stress properties. And it's working on the GABA receptors, similarly to other things like ashwagandha. So it increases the activity of GABA, which inhibits responses in the body, these stress type responses, and has relaxing properties. It is not addictive. It's a natural protein compound. It has no side effects because it's broken down from milk protein. It is also considered hypoallergenic. It is derived from milk, but it does not seem to contain the allergenic components of milk. And over about a 10-year period, there have been 9 clinical studies on over 500 adult volunteers showing the efficacy of lactium. So here's a couple of studies showing the benefits. They use the Stroop test, which is a psychological stress resistance test, which is kind of an odd test. They take the meaning of words and the color so that, like for example, blue. If they write blue, the word blue in red, and they write the word green in blue, and they write the word yellow in, another color, that kind of thing. So the color of the word mismatches the meaning of the word, and it causes some kind of psychological stress. There are other methods of inducing stress, which we've talked about in other presentations. For example, if you're testing the effect of arginine and citrulline on stress, what they do at Florida State University using now products that were actually the subjects of these studies that now provided the arginine or the citrulline. They'll induce stress by plunging volunteers' arms into ice water, which causes a physical stress and tends to raise blood pressure and have other side effects, which can be measured. And then they see which substances, given that stimulus, will avoid blood pressure spiking and all these other side effects due to that acute stress. And, for example, citrulline worked better than arginine at stopping the blood pressure from spiking when there was that stress of sticking your arm into the ice water. But this is a gentler method of doing that with the psychological stress. So the recommended dose is 150 milligrams a day of Lactium. Volunteers in perfect health, by the way. And there was a reduction in the acute blood pressure for the group using Lactium as a response to stress, and stress is a temporary increase in blood pressure as the symptom. And using the same study about 10 years later, the difference in heart rate between the relaxation period after stress and the rest situation before the stress, there was a better heart rate recovery from taking Lactium for about 2 weeks than taking placebo. So in other words, the heart rate after stress went back down to almost normal with Lactium instead of remaining somewhat elevated for a while without the Lactium. And we could see here the claims on some other studies. May help to improve sleep quality, may help you fall asleep faster and stay asleep longer, are a couple of the claims there. So this is the Ashwagandha stress relief formula. Again, we have the clinical dose of these. You take 1 or 2 a day, you're getting also clinical dose of ashwagandha extract. So it's a very nice formula, a couple ingredients. And I want to end with 5 techniques for stress management, because stress is not just related to supplement use and things like that. There are other things that will help with stress. So let's not forget deep breathing, mindfulness, movement, positivity, and self-care. There are other techniques to de-stress rather than just popping pills, taking supplements, making teas, smelling essential oils. They're all valid and legitimate, but let's not limit our options to those. If we're trying to de-stress, let's do all of the above. Stress can actually cause all these negative effects, and we want to minimize that. We want to make them as transient and temporary as possible by using all these techniques, including just being calm, thinking of something calm. Being out in nature, seeing something green or seeing a bird in nature often has calming effects on people as well.
All right. Thank you, Neil, for another excellent presentation. I feel so calm and stress-free. Remember, everyone, if you have questions, you can always reach out to our nutrition team about today's presentation or about any questions that you may have about Now products. And you can see the email address right there on your screen, productinfo@nowfoods.com. So thank you once again, Neil, for an excellent presentation. And thank you, everyone, for joining us for this stress-free event. We'll see you next month.